You're strong.
I know. Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy, episode 30. I'm Jared. I'm here with Brit. What's up, Brit?
Hi.
And today we are finally doing the debate with Mr. JHEAT, who always shows up with the hot takes. What's up, brother?
Flame on. How is everybody doing? I'm just glad to be here.
Doing very well. By the way, this is kind of a crossover of SuperWonder because JHEAT and I do a show on his channel called New Direction, which I will link in the description below. So, JHEAT said some stuff on a stream recently, and Brit immediately DM'd me, was like, "Oh, I'm coming for him." So we decided, let's debate the longevity of Superman and Wonder Woman as a concept, because JHEAT kind of brought up a point that he didn't think it would have lasted that long anyway. Am I representing your comments correctly, JHEAT?
Yes, and the reason I said that is because, first of all, you have the Trinity as a marketing ensemble, as well as Wonder Woman as her own IP and an icon for femininity in general. So having her stagnate as a power couple with Clark would kind of reduce that, at least from a commercial standpoint, and how people interpret trends and IPs. So I'd say a good 2 to 5 year margin. You could have had the Superman Wonder Woman relationship work via the Superman X/Wonder Woman comic. But at the end of the day, either it would have to be a very balanced dynamic, or you would have to allow Diana to regain her agency separate from Clark in her own book.
Now, JHEAT, can I ask you, did you read the Charles Soule book?
Yes, I did.
Didn't they do that in the Charles Soule book?
Yes, they did have a solid dynamic, but you also have to remember Volume 4, Tomasi.
Well, that's Tomasi. And he's already admitted.
It's officially published by DC Comics.
No. I know that. But what we're saying is in the Soule book, the Soule book.
Okay.
You had it where both characters got equal time. And when you notice it in the New 52, because that is a concern that gets brought up to me by fans, that if Superman and Wonder Woman are together, Wonder Woman gets reduced to Superman's girlfriend. So I counter that with saying she ain't Lois Lane, who, by the way, I've come up with the greatest ship of all time. Are you ready, Brit?
Yeah.
I said that in terms of the way their personalities, Lois Lane works best with General Zod. And I have termed it Zois.
I appreciate the joke, but...
No, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. They work very well together. They're both evil people. But anyway, going back to what I was saying.
Hey, stay on top.
If you notice, when they were together in the Superman and Wonder Woman books, they didn't really cross over that much in their individual titles. It was just occasionally we go, what's Superman doing? Always on a date with Wonder Woman. Occasionally they'd have like adventures outside of the Soule book. But it was really like, yes, it's another dynamic. In fact, it even showed up mostly in the Wonder Woman book when David Finch came on, because Azzarella's run was kind of like very separated from the rest of DC. Am I right?
Very mythological and grounded compared to a larger.
No, but Brit, as you guys know, I come prepared. I'm like Batman. So, JHEAT, we have a little PowerPoint presentation of our points, and then we can get so the way we'll do this is that we'll go through a PowerPoint slide, and then you'll give your response.
Okay.
So
I see you noted you brought the original Super Sons from the 70s. Tevye will be appreciative of that callback.
Yeah, but this is but again, the Super Sons has never worked as a concept, so I just wanted to bring that up. So what we want to bring up is that, so actually, no, Brit, you want to take the lead on this one?
All right. So New 52, we've established that they needed the reboot because Post Crisis was not the best, as some fans claim. So, and we've seen the DC documentary of them saying that they've been struggling since the 60s, really, especially when Marvel came on the scene. So, what New 52 was bringing these old characters to modern world. In modern world, yeah, we're in the reality of a little bit dark, edgy, or whatever like that, but these characters still represented something. And for Superman, he has struggled since, I would say, since the 70s, and the 80s reboot was to marvelize him, and even that didn't work. Then you had to kill him off. So with New 52, putting him back into the modern golden age Superman of understanding his Kryptonian roots, of being more of the social crusader, social justice warrior, that really spoke to the modern world.
And by social justice warrior, we don't mean the negative connotation that has today. Just want to be clear on that.
Right. So the reason why New 52 didn't last as long, the deal, he already admitted this. This is the thing. A lot of fans do not. Well, first, DC has a problem with sweeping stuff under the rug, smoke screens and everything, but under pressure, they will tell the truth. And that's what he did. He told the truth of New 52 not lasting because of the laziness of the creatives and because they were scared to take the risk.
Like, JHEAT, did you know that one of the motivations behind the New 52 was breaking up the marriage with Lois?
Okay, first of all, I'll go cheat.
It was.
Aside. Yeah, I'm not refuting that because first of all, basically Lois and Clark actually getting together and getting married was part of a huge synergy campaign for a live action TV show back in the 90s. Even the original Doomsday or Death of Superman set up this. Mm-hmm. So I will not refute that.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that within the show, that once they got married, the ratings for that show plummeted. Like, they were cool with the dynamic of the will they, won't they, or whatever, but actually just settling them down plummeted the sales. So with trying to put that in the comics, it messed up sales even more. Mm-hmm. So the deal, he's a 70s fan, you know, and he liked the Super Sons. He just liked that concept as whatever it was. So he wanted basically Damian to have a playmate. John really does not have a character. He was just for it. Was even the marriage. They didn't want the marriage back per se. It was just Dan Jurgens, his idea. But the deal's main focus was giving Damian Wayne a playmate. And
ironically, that's the whole motivation behind Wonder Woman's daughter.
Yeah. And then you have the 5G plan, which was trying to accumulate, you know, the generations, the decades of DC's history and put it all together of the whole everything happened, whatever, that mantra. And Superman was supposed to be a dictator. And Batman was, of course, the ultimate hero to have your Batman vs. Superman storyline. And John was going to be the new Superman, but Damian would be the villain. So they basically wanted like a Magneto, Professor X type thing with John and Damian. And yeah, that fell apart once Dan DiDio left.
Thank God, because 5G was a horrible idea.
Yeah.
And I hate to cut you off, and I appreciate the conversation, Brit. But even with that, I actually had other sources confirm to me that they were blatantly trying to rip off Marvel's All New, All Different. And the reason I say that is a bad thing is because one of the main leg up Rebirth had, say what you will about the sales inevitably stagnating. Say what you will about that. But the one leg up Rebirth DC had over Marvel is the fact that Rebirth what actually had fanfare, good consensus with the audience, actual consistent sales and books.
But that's the thing. First, Rebirth had shiny #1, so that's just
Collector's
all
market, I will give you that. Collector's
right.
market.
And
And Jay
then the
Heat.
fanfare
Go ahead.
was the internet, and not all the time does Twitter. And basically, it was basically with Twitter fans going, basically hyping this up. But you see with even Convergence, the Convergence trades, when they did that 2-month break, that ruined trade sales, and they haven't recovered from that. And they brought back Post Crisis from that. Then the Post Crisis book, Convergence spinoff with Lois and Clark, that
I mean,
did
Coward
not sell.
Superman.
Right.
30
That
less
didn't
than
sell.
30,000 in sales. Less than
Exactly.
30,000.
The
So
other
if you
thing, Jay, and I'm sorry, but I just wanted to jump in here, is that according to comic book shop owners, compared to New 52, when you got to Rebirth, you didn't see this massive sales thing. The only reason why you may have gotten like more sales at first is because they were double shipping the books. So it
exactly.
wasn't necessarily the content. It was more like they're just throwing crap out.
In the initiative, they had the returns, and like you said, the double shipping that helped them, boost up a little bit, but it still didn't succeed as New 52 did.
That may be true, but it was a relative uplift from Convergence and Post Futures End, which was a major decline for the brand.
That
But
is
the thing
true.
is, Convergence was still bringing back what the fans so-called love. It still didn't have really much to do with New 52, because keep in mind, when they were trying to bring this back, they were destroying New 52. Like,
I agree.
especially with Tomasi. He
I
was
agree.
making them purposely, he was making Clark and Diana unlikable.
Well,
It
and
was
JHEAT. So you get what they and I remember vividly. So I was reading the Superman Wonder Woman book still throughout it. So I was like, okay, maybe it gets good. So they did in the last volume. It's basically like a wrap up thing, and one of the issues they had. Okay, so for context, at the end of volume 1, when Sewell was on the book. This is around the time Wonder Woman became the God of War, and Clark was good with it because he's like, you know what, I trust you. I get what you're going. I get what you're doing. In the Tomasi book, they make it out like Clark was pissed off that Diana was the God of War and didn't tell him. So I'm like, that's how I know Tomasi clearly didn't read the book before he jumped on, because that was literally addressed in the last issue of volume 1.
I mean, he even said that he didn't want to keep what Soul did. He didn't want to keep that. He thought that that was the honeymoon phase, or the sunshine and rainbows, and he wanted to do something different. Which, even with Diana's Goddess of War status, he made it seem like she was bloodthirsty, like she was this warrior. But like Soul, he said that she wanted to basically change it to a peaceful role.
Yeah,
So
she kind of wanted to like redefine war, and that's the thing. And yes, you are right, JHEAT, that when it comes to Convergence and all that stuff, that was like the beginning of the end for New 52. But I want to bring up an interesting point. In Brit, you literally I never thought of this. So what was Convergence doing? Bringing back Post Crisis. It's almost like when you bring back Post Crisis, it's like it creates a crisis in the DC universe. Isn't that funny how that works out? Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And that's the thing. When you think about it, and by the way, this was an issue that Atchison brought up when we were discussing Death of Superman, the movie where they broke up Superman and Wonder Woman off screen. And before you say it, JHEAT, I'm never going to let that go. It's the idea that the problem with what the New 52 turned into and what the DCAMU turned into, you were trying to put post-crisis stories with New 52 characters, and I'm sorry, you didn't.
And I will say there is a difference compared to the transition, for lack of a better term, between Convergence and Rebirth. If there is a difference between that and what the DCAMU did, since a lot of the DCAMU adaptations were either for job security or classic storylines that were going to be adopted anyway, but were reconsolidated into the Decamu for convenience rather than wasting an Elseworld slot.
Oh, and by the way, Brit, I just want to say one more thing. When and I'll let you go. When we were interviewing Sam Liu, and I told him the plot of Superman Doomed, I can tell he actually thought that was a better plot.
Yeah, because they're, like I said, a lot of these creators, under pressure, they admit their wrongdoings or believe that they are right. And the thing about Tucker is what he was already in this agenda of, I don't like this new stuff and it's just for the younger fans. And he was thinking of the mindset of, I only care about the older fans and what I grew up with. So that means post-crisis. Even Superman's whole his 180 personality of the Clark Kent and Cal separation of the Kents, they really didn't have a role, but you put them in the Doomsday, and wanting to basically, the only significant story it seems like for post-crisis Superman is Doomsday and killing him off. So it really didn't make sense to adapt that yet again, and you had no other storyline. Then with Wonder Woman, he had this like frustration, and he really ignores the Wonder Woman Bloodlines movie because no one was interested in trying to basically do a Batman hush and put her in her post-crisis status quo. But you have
her
Steve,
costume too.
Yeah, and then you have also trying to do a little combination of Wonder Woman 17 too. So so all of that did not, you built this audience, and they invest in it, and they show that they can support it and actually buy. But then when you make them feel like, okay, well, I got your money or whatever, I got your investment, but now I'm going to put in what I actually like, and what you like was wrong, then how do you think that these fans will react? They will leave.
Your response?
Now we can play the nostalgia card until we're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, it still stems from the fact that yes, New 52 or more modern conjectured fans got a raw deal. That's why with mine and Jared's project, the New Direction Verse, #New Direction Verse, we gave you a compromise. Superman, post-crisis Superman, and then New 52 Clark Kent rebrands as Scion for a time.
Now, go ahead.
And then we slowly build like the two Clarks slowly getting along, building more of a big brother, little brother dynamic. And it all culminates in Godkiller 2. And spoilers, by the way, for about a 4 or 5 month video. Post-crisis Clark ultimately sacrifices himself to fight off mythologically accurate Thor, or God of War Ragnarok, if you want a more direct example. And then it's more of a patching of the torch in the aftermath.
Yeah, and that's what they could have done. Now, the way, so I have a couple of slides, and the way it's going to work is I'm going to pose both of you a question, and you'll each have a certain amount of time to give a response to the question. What do you guys think? 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
Brit?
5. Maybe 5.
Okay. So who would like to go first?
Brit.
Oh, okay.
So now I'll let you know when to talk. Now, the first question is, now, would Superman and Wonder Woman have been a success had they not sabotaged it? And I'm going to add a little addendum here. Had they not sabotaged the New 52? In other words, had they not done like Convergence, the Truth story and such? So I'm going to start with you, Brit. Go.
Okay, so yes, it can work long term. First of all, are we talking about the merchandise too?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so first, let's go back all the way to the 70s. Superman and Wonder Woman have been linked wider in the merchandise and advertisement since the 70s, 60s maybe. And so you have this already this audience of the general audience. As you can see, the rings, that's new, and they're wedding rings. couples love this dynamic of being equals, of being a power couple. A power couple is very positive. What you can do to have it long term is you slow build it, as we do love, Jared and I, the best friends, slowly falling in love type thing. Even in the post crisis, you can say that they were in each other's books, though. They were having these adventures, they were guest starring, they were building their friendship after Action 600 whole thing. But it was a slow build. And then you go on from there, and you can have them have a joint book to show their actual relationship progress. So, yeah, they can be individuals in their solo books, they can guest star, and then you can have a book just solely dedicated to their relationship. Now, also, just going back to the merchandise, it doesn't really make sense that you have this, if they aren't supposed to be together within the story, that you don't see any other couples, especially with, if Superman and Lois supposed to be like this iconic couple, why isn't she marketable as a character, as this icon or whatever? But you have Superman and Wonder Woman together all the time. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about that.
Okay, you were done with 3 minutes to spare. Now, JHEAT, just let me reset, and then we can get you in there. Okay, so here we go. Hang on. Technical difficulties, folks. Goddamn technology. All right. All right. So, JHEAT, now I'm going to ask you the very same question. If they had not pulled the BSery with the New 52, would it have been a success? You ready? Set, go.
All right. I'm going to address 3 main counterpoints. Counterpoint 1, we still have to factor the relative decline and disaster that was Future's End. Now,
I'm saying without the BS of the, without all those stories.
I'm not really focusing on like DC YOU. I was setting up like from Future's End onward and then cutting DC YOU out.
Okay, we can start with that. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So let's say the higher-ups and editor-in-chief made a different decision. Okay, this was a rush storyline. We tried to rip off Spider-Man's Clone Saga, but with DC characters. It was just a bad story. Where do we go? Do we just keep, and they just make a different decision? Yes, you can make the power couple Super Wonder. I will concede a lot of Brit's points. That is a solid argument. However, you still have one of the Trinity and arguably the weakest IP out of the 3, overly synonymous with Superman and arguably the original hero of the Golden Age. It completely usurps the Trinity dynamic, or you have to actually be willing to address that in a Trinity title. Now, granted, these are all relatively small, easy fixes, but it does change the overall zeitgeist and context. Now, Jared and I, through #NewDirectionverse, did offer an alternative that would soften the blow with Scion. That would relatively soften the blow. However, if you were going to remove the iconography of the Lois and Clark or Clois angle, I'm not a fan of shipping, so correct me if I butchered that, you would have to commit to it wholesale. Don't just use it as a gimmick and then abandon it after 3 years.
Is that it?
And point number 3, even with all of that aside, you have to factor novelty and diminishing returns. If you don't have a counter against that, the sales will fall, and then you'll just revert back to what works. Now I'm done.
Okay, allow me to start. I'm going to address part 3 with the diminishing returns. Yeah, you're going to have like any type of diminishing returns on a title. That just happens as it proceeds. The thing is, with this book, you had more of a healthy like maintenance of control, particularly pre the Tomasi coming on the book and completely destroying it. You actually had pretty decent runs. Like it peaked at like 100,000 copies. And by the way, the chart is later on this PowerPoint, so we will go over that. But and the lowest I think was like 50K. I have to check. So for this, it's actually not that bad. Now, as for the Wonder Woman diminishing as an IP, here's the counterpoint to that is like, if you write them correctly, It's not like she becomes like, oh my gosh, Superman, you saved me, and all that. It turns into, like Brit said, them being a relationship of equals. Yeah, you're gonna have some people that see her as diminished into Wonder Woman, into Superman's girlfriend. Arguably, she gets diminished into Steve Trevor's girlfriend, or with the Wonder Bat people, Batman's girlfriend if she's with them. So really, either way, she's still being diminished. With Superman, it's diminished less because they both are. Yes, Wonder Woman is, I would argue, after the movie, she's way more iconic than she's ever been after the first movie.
I'll
However,
give you that.
yeah, thank you. However, the thing about it, she is still the most iconic female superhero ever. Superman is obviously the most iconic male superhero. She's still going to be popular. You just and the way to fix her IP not working, or like her IP, her being the weakest IP of the three, put a competent writer on the Wonder Woman book. You have them put a George Perez on the Wonder Woman book, because Perez is the reason why a lot of Wonder Woman, Perez is the reason why Wonder Woman is as strong as she is, period.
Exactly.
I'll give you that.
Now, Brit, your points?
I want to address the Trinity.
Yeah.
So with the Trinity, first of all, it's very superficial. It's not even a real thing. It's just for marketing, and even with that, it's not even solely marketable. You said, like, Wonder Woman and Superman are diminished really because of Batman. Batman being DC's cash cow. You have a World's Finest book. You've had these Batman and Superman books, but Superman isn't always in Batman's book, if at all, because Batman editorial doesn't want, supers in the book. But you have Batman in everyone else's book. The Trinity pretty much was Superman and Wonder Woman romantically linked anyway, and then Batman was pretty much like the uncle, or the godfather from
He's
Kingdom
the
Come.
third Batwheel.
Yeah, so I mean, the whole Trinity thing, we're trying to say that, yeah, that doesn't really work from the actual history within the comics and the idea of what the Trinity is. So no, that still doesn't really work with saying that they can't, Superman and Wonder Woman can't be a couple just because of the Trinity. When even with the Trinity too, she's the third wheel of the World Finest. So when her elevation was within Kingdom Come and she became the voice of reason, she's not to be in between the two, like trying to be this bridge or whatever that like Rucka or something tried to implement, but she is the mother, Superman is the father, and Batman is the uncle godfather.
Super dad. So now you both have made fantastic points. Now I'm going to ask the question to each of you. You're each going to have 5 minutes to propose this. And again, you don't have to use the full time. I'm going to ask Brit first this time. How would you make Superman and Wonder Woman a long-term successful title? Go.
All right. So, like I said, you first started off with them being best friends, and you have this courting and just the whole relationship. We actually see the progression in real time. Second, the events and putting their worlds together. You can do a lot with their worlds, especially with Clark being a reporter and Diana being an ambassador. You can have them travel around the world. You can have them going through actual, real world events, and building their character, their supporting cast, not only the supporting cast that they have separately, but bringing in new people. And that really was what Soul tried to do, or he started, with Hesha. She was the Amazonian doctor, and she was also a hero, or, such of her own. And she brought the drama of their relationship, feeling like she could protect Diana, and she wasn't really trusting of Clark and everything like that. So you can put their worlds together. You can have Apollo and Zod, their villains coming together. as a whole villains group. You can and also with the public perception of their relationship. Do you have exploring it with Clark and Diana, and exploring it with Superman and Wonder Woman? And then how does it affect the Justice League? And what does that entail of how will they break up? Yeah, you can have even a little breakup story temporarily, and then have them come back together somehow. So either way, you can put them in a lot of different scenarios to make it long term.
So you could say, Brit, that they have a special bond.
Yeah,
I had
very
to.
nice, very nice.
I had to. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. So JHEAT, same question. How would you, let's say you were put in charge of making Superman and Wonder Woman a long-term successful title. How would you do it? Go.
Now, I want to address this first and foremost. I'm not the biggest fan of shipping, so I would largely have my story be character driven and story centric. I would not focus on relationships on that too much.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, I would take the same approach as we did in New Direction Verse. I'll probably have Jared remember to link the playlist, or I will leave a link to it in the comment section. But neither as it may, if I had to completely keep the compromise of two Superman running around, I would still play up that story to where Diana makes, and actually have it story driven. Diana makes a deal with Hera and Hades in order to have the New 52 Superman brought back. Post-crisis Superman tells her this is folly, this is a bad idea. Diana doesn't listen, and then you get the events as they were. I won't spoil them for you, but if you see our New Direction Verse content, you at least have an idea.
I will put the playlist here or in the description. JHEAT and I do really fun work there. So in other words, do the New Direction universe there.
Pretty much. Okay,
that actually works. For me, I would say put a competent writer on it and keep Tomasi the hell away from it. So
even I have to admit, putting Tomasi on the fourth and final volume was too biased.
Actually, it was fourth. He had the last 3 volumes.
Oh, okay, he had the last 3. Still, if you're going to try to interplay it without coming across as bias, Tomasi was the worst choice.
I know, right? So now, to be clear, I do enjoy his Green Lantern Corps, so I don't hate all of his writing. It's like Tom King. Only I hate most of Tomasi's writing. Anyway, moving on. So part 3 deals with the financials of Superman and Wonder Woman. So the creative and financial issues with Superman and Wonder Woman as individual franchises and icons. And this kind of gets into what you were saying, JHEAT. Now, let me ask you this, for specifically Wonder Woman. How do you fix Wonder Woman as a franchise so she can't, because as I understand it, JHEAT, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, part of your objection to this is that her IP is not strong enough. Is that correct?
To an extent, yes. Now,
how would you fix Wonder Woman's IP to make it strong enough so she can, this could work? Go.
First of all, the original 2017 movie would be a huge step up for us. So let's go ahead and address that right now.
Not 1984?
Wait, there's a 1984 movie?
I know, right? Go on.
But as I was saying, you actually have to take the time to invest. Don't rely on the iconography alone or just the de facto dynamic of the Trinity marketing-wise. Actually put in the work to build up Diana's character. Don't rely on other adaptations. Really put in the work, a competent writing team, and over a compelling story, actual interplay with other characters and franchises. If you rely too much on, it makes it seem like either Diana's the third wheel, the third fiddle, or just part of an ensemble. And Diana and the Wonder family can hold their own in most situations and most storylines. But Superman is a whole different, I'm not saying Superman is a whole different tier. That's not what I'm saying. Is that there's so much establishment and iconography with Superman and arguably a century of interlocking storytelling. Something that groundbreaking outside of a niche or genuine curiosity, that's going to be really hard to make it stick unless you really put in the work.
Is that it?
Well,
Jay, is it?
Oh, yes. Again, okay. Like I said, it's mostly IP and building up the respective franchises to say, to where the general audience, not comic book fans, general audiences can actually believe this, because there is a difference.
Yes, that is true. Because I always say, when you're talking about comic book movies, first off, they're shooting for the general audience. Yes, they would like to have all the comic book fans on board, but really they're going after the people that have never read a comic book in their life and are just showing up for a good movie.
Now I'm done.
Yeah. All right. So, Brit, same question. How would you fix Wonder Woman as a franchise to make her more sustainable so she can support the Super Wonder like IP? Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, we have to take account until in the general audience. The general audience does know Wonder Woman, and you had Linda Carter. You do have an audience for her, and it's mostly just comic books, which again, it's the writer's fault, because like Tomasi, he has said that she was intimidating, that he can't grasp her character, because she demands the spotlight. And so it's basically these, I'm just saying it, male writers, even with King too, he's saying that it's difficult to write her because she's a strong female character and she's the main character. With Lois, you don't have to have her in every storyline. I mean, look now, she's the editor-in-chief of with the Daily Planet, but she's pretty much in the background of the Superman books, not even in Action Comics, really.
And that's why we're awesome right now.
Right. So for that, like I said, that will be on the writers. That is not the character. Second, what Wonder Woman represents, I mean, you can't take that away. And in reality of the world, no one likes a strong woman, like, period. So with her, she has that against her. With Superman, I mean, he is iconic. The S shield, the even the underwear, the cape. But that's really all he has. He has a certain appearance, but his sales in comics has struggled. Animation, barely there. Even James Tucker admitted that the animated movies, they weren't selling right. So, of course, what did they do? They went to Death of Superman. You have his most successful movie was 40 years ago. So, yeah, Superman is in the same boat Wonder Woman is in. So, actually, to say that she's like the weakest of the IPs, no, they're basically the same. What you have to do is elevate them both, which I feel like New 52 did, because again, you're not trying to put him as Superman, as just Clark Kent. And that's the thing with this whole he's just Clark, he's this himbo or whatever like that. He's this gentle, naive doormat. The general audience is not going to like that. With Wonder Woman, you can't go over the whole, and even with the evil Superman too. With Wonder Woman, you can't go with the bloodthirsty, injustice type, Mary Macbeth type, Lady Macbeth type character, but you can't have her naive and like 1984. So with both IPs, you have to find that balance. And with the audience and the general audience, again, you really have to take into consideration the general audience.
Okay.
And what resonates with them is that otherworldliness that both of the characters have. And that is how you elevate the IPs.
And before we move forward, I just want to address this. If we're factoring the Trinity as a whole, the Batman IP is overhyped. I will be the cardinal sin, I know, but I will openly admit this, that compared to Batman's IP is on a completely different level compared to Superman and Wonder Woman. I will openly admit that. And yeah, if you actually built these two up and gave them the time of day, they could improve. So when I do actually scale the de facto IP dynamic within the Trinity itself, it's Batman, a completely different tier because he's the cash cow of the DC brand. Then it's Superman, and then slightly below him is Lois. I mean, goddamn, 40 and Slip.
Whoa,
Please edit this out.
Whoa.
Diana, Wonder Woman, edit
this
out. Edit this out.
All right. No, I'm not editing this out. This is staying in. In fact, you know what? No. JHEAT, you're not getting away with that. You're getting this.
Why did you say that name?
Okay.
So,
I regret nothing.
I want to address a point here. An issue that the new 52 Wonder Woman run had until the Finch run is that it was separate from the DC universe largely, or at least it felt that way. I think if from the very beginning they tried to like plug Wonder Woman into the DC universe and still had the mythological stories, they could still do both. But if they actually took an effort to like plug her into DC, not necessarily just have her hanging out with Superman all the time, just have her interacting with like Batman, Aquaman, the other Justice Leaguers more, I think that would have been a little better that would have helped, as opposed to making her seem like a completely separate person. And arguably when the Finches got on and largely, I think, fixed that issue, it was a little too late for that version of Wonder Woman, I think.
To an extent, I will concede that.
Now, next question. All right. So this is an argument that my good friend Rob from Comic Explained brought up when we were talking about it. Rob, I'm calling you out. Is there are no stakes with Superman and Wonder Woman. Now, what kind? Now the question is: so, what kind of stakes are there? What kind of stakes? I don't know why. I don't know how tired I was when I was writing this. What kind of stakes can there be with Superman and Wonder Woman and the misconception that's easy? Why and how would the traditional status quo provide supposedly higher stakes? Why it doesn't? So in other words, how could you make it so there are stakes instead of just like the superficial argument? I'll start with Brit this time. Go.
Okay, so they are, if you want to say God, the whole godly thing, they are not gods. They are perceived as such. They are, but their world is otherworldly, is godly. So with the stakes, yes, they are on a much bigger scale because you're dealing with Diana. She has the gods as her family. She has, if you want to go with that, the Zeus origin, Zeus, the king of the gods, as her father. You have Apollo, Eros, all of them dealing with that. So you have their whole mischief thing, and then you have Clark with his scientific sci-fi type, those villains or whatever. Like I said earlier, you put that all together, and that's ensues chaos. And especially with the thing that you are also exploring is magic, the mythical, and the scientific. Like, how can you put that all together to make it make sense? How Clark is sort of weakened by magic. Diana, not all the time can she actually deal with Clark's enemies. So you have this where they say there's no stakes because they can defeat the villains or whatever with ease. No, they can't, because again, Superman has a weakness to magic and all of that. But also, if you're exploring their character, Diana, she's more open, celebrating what makes her unique. But Clark has hidden himself for so long. So you have that conflict of them trying to find a balance of Clark. He still has this inner conflict of, can he, open up a little bit more, or is it a danger to anyone else? And with Diana, she's like, it's okay, but she also needs to learn how man's world isn't very open to acceptance. And with their supporting cast, you can still have the whole supporting cast do whatever they do. I prefer Steve and Etta to be married and an elderly couple. So you can have it where even they are in the crossfires of, like in Special Bonds, them being in the in Checkmate, or with their military thing with the Daily Planet. You have a conflict of interest, really, because I would say with the Daily Planet, nobody cares for newspapers, but if you go with the more blogging and technical route, then you can have Clark, you know, dealing with, like I said, I love dealing having him deal with real world issues. And how can they deal with that not only as Clark and Diana as reporter and ambassador, but as Superman and Wonder Woman. And that's one point also that Jeff Johns put in the Justice League book. And what did Batman do? He's like, well, if you're trying to deal with, other countries conflicts, then you're putting yourself in this image of being authoritative or something like that. So yeah, that is what I think, how you can deal with the stakes. And also with Lois, I mean, you already know that she's going to get saved.
Yes, exactly. So
yeah,
in a way, no stakes there.
Yeah, so it's really, the whole stakes thing is very much a double standard. And that's the thing, that Lois, they want to make her seem like she's this independent, this fierce character, but she's only written that way because at the end of the day, she is going to get saved. Even if she dies, honestly, you either have Superman turning back time or he's going to turn evil. So yeah, there's no stakes there whatsoever.
Cool. So real quick, I just wanted to a point. If you see me raise my finger once, it means you have 1 minute left. Just wanted to do that. So if you see me doing this, that's why. All right, JHEAT, how would you, if you're in charge of this, insert stakes and go?
Excuse me. As for me, now this, because you have a very uphill battle, because not only with their IPs being relatively smaller than Batman's, yes, I will openly admit that, but also you have the stigma of the Injustice story. Now, Injustice is a great Elseworld, the actual comics itself. The video game, a little too edgy for my taste. But even with that precedent is there, is that it creates the stigma that Super Wonder is a relatively toxic relationship. One, Kingdom Come did it a lot better, and is actually the original version of this idea. And two, precedent aside, it's better to have an equal partnership where they overcome it, where they balance each other out and overcome their respective challenges together, rather than a de facto relationship of, oh, I could talk a bunch of crap and I'm censoring myself because I do not want to make this any more of a headache for Jared and censor when he has to edit this.
Thank you.
And she has to be rescued or bailed out every time. I have nothing against Lois Lane's character, but I understand her archetype. Her archetype is from a bygone era, the damsel in distress. And Steve Trevor is just the male equivalent. Am I wrong?
He's the mamsel in distress.
You've been waiting on that one.
I'm channeling Brit. She does this all the time, so we're all good.
Somebody tell me you've been holding that one in.
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
I'll take what I can get. Even with this bottom panel right here, when New 52 Lois gets possessed by Brainiac, it actually does play into some of what I'm referring to by that precedent. Even with the exact line, is that like a deal you made?
And then Wonder Woman saying, we didn't have to make the deal. It's just obvious with us. And that's the other thing. That's one of the cool things about the Sewell book when he wrote it, is that there was a lot of nonverbal communication with Superman and Wonder Woman because they know each other so well. They don't have to say these things. That's the problem with Superman with Lois. It's too it has to be exactly in your face and obvious. There's no room for, okay, you can guess this. It just doesn't work. So moving on to, I'm going to speed this up because we have to get this. So now we're going to talk about legacy, pun intended. Now, the thing about it is that, see, in terms of the kids, I'm gonna combine these two because I have to speed this up. So now let me ask you guys this: which IP do you think has the more long lasting in terms of like enduring children. It's just Superman and Wonder Woman or Superman with Lois. And how would you fix Trinity? And I'm going to start with Brit. Go.
Okay, so with John, John Kent, Lois and Clark's kid, he's first, his whole entire character again was just for Damian Wayne. He didn't really have any significance for the marriage. He was basically, the marriage was brought back just for him, but still it's a background, it's a non-factor. Now that he's aged up, he's just a carbon copy of Clark. The only difference is that first he's trying to be what Tom Taylor wanted him to be, was a pacifist, and but he does, date a reporter. He is a reporter now, or as he get older, he will become a reporter. Staying in Metropolis, he as his best friend, quote unquote, is a Batman character, and the only thing is that he is bisexual, and even that is not really bisexual because they haven't actually explored that, but that's it. So he really hasn't brought anything significant to the Superman IP, and he really has no relevance even now within the books, because you can see in Action Comics, not even the twins that Johnson introduced, they have no purpose at all either. They were to be John's replacements, haven't done anything. Clark and Diana's son, John Kent, too, from Kingdom Come universe, he is, first you're putting together, like I said, the magic mythical entities or whatever of Diana's world with this sci-fi, that Kryptonian world, and putting it all together. And you create these kids that really you don't actually know what kind of powers they will have. John Kent, the second, he is the guardian of hypertime. He can time travel. He does have the same powers as Superman with the flight, of course, kind of looks like him, but it's still the fact that his costume is still a mixture of his parents instead of just a carbon copy of one. And then back to John, Lois and Clark's John, he really doesn't have anything significant with Lois. I mean, really, what can she give, to really
annoyance?
Well, that, and leeching, because John, so with the what was your other question, Jared?
How can Trinity be redeemed?
Okay, so I mean, Tom King,
That's what many people say when they talk about Tom King.
he doesn't know how to write female characters. The thing about it, he Trinity is supposed to be, I think, a mixture of his niece and his daughter. So, and it seems like he's better fit to write her as a toddler than writing her as a teenager. And what I would do is that I would really have like a female writer write her as a teenager than whatever Tom King thinks a teenage girl, how she would talk and act like. If she is supposed to be adopted, well, I mean, the thing is, Diana, she, within whatever position she's in right now, kids is just not within her character right now. With going from Conrad's run, with her not having, and she doesn't need it, but an established romantic relationship, and then if King is trying to like force Steve, like rush that for Trinity, but it doesn't even seem like Steve has a significance for her, with the backups that he's had. So, yeah, I really don't know how to fix her because the way Tom King has presented her is it's not it just seems very contrived and
Okay.
she's just not a character ready.
Okay. JHEAT, same questions. And to remind you, the questions are essentially who do you think has the stronger IP in terms of the kids of Superman and Lois or Superman and Wonder Woman? And if you were in charge of redeeming Trinity, can it be done and how would you do it? Go.
I'll go ahead and start with Trinity first since I'm kind of running out of
Okay.
time here. I'll go ahead and start with Trinity first. First of all, we don't really, Tom King is really taking his time with this arc since he's using a lot of flashbacks and sequences. We don't really know too much about Trinity. The closest we've gotten to anything resembling Trinity's personality and her mannerisms are in the backup stories where she's having play dates with the Super Sons and then babysitting her. So there's not really much we know of Trinity in the grand scheme of things. She doesn't even have a solo title. So that remains to be seen. But if I had to redeem Trinity, the best way to redo it based on what the information we have at the time of this recording is to maybe speed up what Tom King's storyline with the Sovereign, even though in my opinion it's just a rip off of the Fury two-parter from the Justice League cartoon, but that's another conversation.
It really is.
But even with that, there's too much remains to be seen. But if you want my genuine feelings on how a daughter of Wonder Woman adopted otherwise, check out New Direction verse with her politic end.
Yes.
Now,
by the way, to entice people, she becomes a Green Lantern.
That's interesting.
Thank you.
As for John, now yes, that whole ensemble with giving Damian a playmate and how the Super Sons callback was a callback to the 70s, all of that is true. I will not refute that and try to downplay it in any way. I'm over 200 subscribers. You guys have supported me a lot the past year and a half. I would not do that to you guys. But at the same time, it does stem from John being a pseudo blank slate and to help further expand the world's finest concept to what they were essentially doing for 5G, meaning John was repurposed for 5G, not a direct product of it. Okay. As for Super Wonder Children, it really depends where you go with the story, because you could either have a Kingdom Come type situation to where they're relatively to where they're just regular metahumans and strive to protect the Earth, the Injustice route where they're basically tyrants, or the Kingdom or the Dark Knight Strikes where we get the invasion of Krypton. But that's besides the point. Needless to say, John can't. I don't even think you could even argue John has his own IP, even with the super family dynamic. John cannot stand on his own 2 feet. And you want to know how I say that? You could literally, in Superman and Lois, the CW TV show, I know it's on his last season, but bear with me. You could literally swap out John's personality, mannerisms, and character traits with a literal OC, and nothing changes other than his name.
I know, right? The only link he has is the super part. Is that it, JHEAT?
Yeah, that's all I had to say.
Okay. You wanted to add something, Brit?
Oh, yeah. Bringing up the CW show, and even that, Jordan, I mean, with first of all having an OC, but even his whole storyline was basically repeating Clark's storyline. He had his own Lana. He kind of a little bit overboard with the emo type, teenage attitude, but basically the only way John, a Lois and Clark kid, he can only be a carbon copy of Clark, because Lois, what they wanted to do was have it that do the Gohan Dragon Ball Z route, that if you are half human, that you are, or Percy Jackson or something, you are like this golden, golden child, this special, more powerful than a purebred Kryptonian. Yeah, and that didn't work.
Yeah.
But John,
let her cook. Let her
go
cook.
ahead.
yeah, but John, he really just can't stand on his own because he doesn't have anything really, just a story that really makes him unique from any other of you know, legacy kids that you can come up with. Connor, first of all, they took away Connor, or because they wanted to have room for John. But Connor, he has telekinesis. He is being a clone of Clark and Lex. I mean, even that is way more interesting than Lois and Clark's kid because Connor has a conflict. John does not. So that is why, even with Clark and Diana having children, they will have conflict because you have these two powerful, superheroes now having to protect their children from how the world, will perceive their kids.
Exactly. Now, before we conclude the debate portion of this episode, I just wanted to bring up those sales that I brought up earlier. So what we have here is the Superman Wonder Woman book compared to the Rebirth Trinity. And then I believe this is the Coward Superman book, right?
Clark and
Right.
Lois, yes.
I'm calling it the Coward Superman book. So
Right.
now, Brit, I have a quick question. So what issue of Superman Wonder Woman did Tomasi hop on?
13.
13. Okay, so it's around here. So what I wanted to bring up is that if you notice, so right here, so the highest it started off is like 94,000. Pretty solid debut, or like really 100,000, depending on who you ask. Now, the point I will bring up is that when Sewell was on the book, you notice how, like, yes, you had a drop, but it wasn't that much of a dramatic drop. In fact, it went up a few times too. As opposed to when you look at like Rebirth Trinity or Coward Superman started off. Here's my point. So Coward Superman was marketed as the real Superman, the one that all the fan base wanted. If all the fan base wanted him, how come his peak was 35,000?
If I remember correctly, Clark and Lois was a maxi series, or at least they tried to downplay it as a maxi series.
Yeah, they downplayed it because it sold so horribly.
Yeah, at first it was to be an ongoing, especially with Jurgens being on it, but then with the pre-sales, and these are pre-sales actually, estimates from Comic-Con, and they basically give you a roundabout, of the pre-sales, but Tony Daniel actually said what Superman and Wonder Woman sold was over 100K for the first issue. Now with the Clark and Lois book, yeah, that just totally, I mean, the pre-sales was pre-orders were probably around 35, but it could have sold actually sold less than that, and that is why they changed it to be just like this maxi 8-issue run, which honestly does not make sense. I mean, I've never really heard of an 8-issue run with them trying to put it in main continuity.
JHEAT,
So yeah,
your reputation. Now, I will say one thing. JHEAT, we brought up earlier in the debate how Superman and Wonder Woman, for the most part, both of them have a pretty weak IP because overshot by Batman and bad writers, right? When was the last time a Superman and or Wonder Woman book got over 100,000 in sales?
Has not recuperated since. The closest you may have gotten is anywhere between 75 to 85,000, but even then, it's like a Blue Moon or an Elseworld story.
100,000 for this book.
It has not been replicated since. I will be the first to acknowledge that.
But so he goes. So here are the numbers, and yes, it did drop. But here's the key thing: remember how like series are gonna drop, as we brought up earlier. Correct? It's gonna happen. Yes. Now,
up and down.
It all depends on how much of a severe drop is it. Yeah, granted, you had like from 100,000 to like let's say 60,000, but it stayed relatively in that
range.
In that range. So you had more of a sustainable IP here, as opposed to these two failures. It went from 93 to 65, and then all the way down to 21,000. And then for the other one, 35 to 18,000. They never recovered from that.
It did spike a couple of times, but after issue 15, it just fell off.
It just collapsed. Now, to be clear, Rebirth Trinity was actually a pretty decent book when you can ignore the fact that they're trying to make you feel bad for liking Superman and Wonder Woman. But I digress. But JHEAT, your points on the sales, and then we'll let you go.
The numbers speak for themselves. Let me say that first and foremost. So, and what happened with Sales Run, it shows potential. But would it work long term, and would editorial and the editors-in-chief stick with it? I believe that what Jared and I had to do with the new direction versus what we came up with would have been a healthy and solid compromise at the time. That way you still have the nostalgia of post-crisis Superman returning. You get a passing of the torch, and then you have an opportunity, if followed up on, Lois regaining a sense of agency without having without having a Superman to fall back on.
Yep, there you go. Brit, any points before we let the kind gentleman go?
Okay, so another thing is also digital sales. At that time, digital sales were on a high, but now because of Rebirth and just the whole diminishing of comics period, it's gone flat. And with Comixology merging with Amazon, yeah, it's awful. So we have to also take into account to the digital sales, which Justice League 12 was the highest selling digital issue that came out, and that's what really skyrocketed digital, people using digital apps for comics. And then you have another thing was Superman and Wonder Woman. It was launched 2 years after New 52, which it didn't have the special initiatives, and that shows the success, because not only did it launch 2 years afterwards, it didn't have returnability. It didn't have, I would say it did have the variant covers, but it only had like 5 maybe. With other books now, they have exclusive comic shop exclusives, and also the open order ones or whatever like that, and that can run up to about 15 different variant covers for one issue. So with all that, this book and this couple, plus the general audience of the merchandise, it really can have the longevity. It's just the fact of, like said, Dan DiDio admitted, they're lazy and they don't want to invest, because they just really want to have like this baseline of middle roles sometimes. So it's not the concept, it's just the creatives, and you need creatives that can be more invested in ideas.
I agree. I completely agree, Britt. And we're waiting for Jared to clear up some of his static.
Sorry about that.
Right.
But I'll go ahead and state my outro while Jared is wrapping that up. You can follow me on JHEAT75 on Twitter, or JHEAT or X, and JHEAT Blaze on YouTube. I'm also setting up a Twitch account, which I will officially promote soon. I just have to complete the setup. And I'm a comics reviewer, I'm a movie reviewer, gamer, and I also collab with this gentleman, if he can actually get his microphone up and running, and multitude of topics. So if you've liked anything I've had to say here, or even Jared Comics League content in general, like SuperWonder Legacy with Brit, please feel free to check me out and like, comment, subscribe.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. The smoke alarm was going off. There's not a fire. Don't worry about it. I'm okay. So anyways, and then I'll put like all of JHEAT's links in the description below, and I'll put the playlist for New Direction verse up. So anyway, JHEAT, thank you for joining us, brother.
No problem, Britt. It's been a pleasure debating with you. I would love to come onto the show and converse with you guys again in the future.
Cool. Yes, please do.
All right. Flame off.
All right. So now we're going to transition. Brit and I had another topic in mind because we like to talk really long. So what we're going to do, actually, Brit, you want to introduce our new topic for today?
Okay, so we've talked about Superman and Wonder Woman, like, of course, it is the show, but we want to give the flowers of other, great power couples.
Yep. So we're going to be talking about other DC couples we like. Superman and Wonder Woman will still be in there, but we're going to talk about other stuff, of course. Now, so let me bring up the new PowerPoint. All right, let's do this. So, best power couples, by the way, shout out to me and my Photoshop skills that are improving because I made this image. So,
and I love it.
I know, isn't
the
it
top
sweet?
3.
Yeah, it's my top 3 favorite couples, and I believe Britt, I think you share you share my top 3 together. So
yeah.
The tough part is see, the way I normally do this is I copy and paste an image to Photoshop to Photoshop, and then I click like remove background, but sometimes it removes too much, so I have to go in there and like re-add it and everything. Like, it's a real hassle. These were the easiest ones to work with. So anyway, moving on. So DC has the best comic characters of all time. They've also had some of the most iconic couples. So let's go through that, shall we? Obviously, number 1, Superman and Wonder Woman. It's the namesake of this show.
Exactly. So when the first tease was, of course, in the 40s, well, 1944, when Marston had Diana dancing with a man in a mask, but he had on the Superman costume, and he said that, Superman and Wonder Woman dancing together, that it seems appropriate. And then we also had the 1942 newspaper promoting Wonder Woman a year after her debut, and it was titled A Wife for Superman. Then, but within continuity or the shared universe, they really didn't have, the interaction that we would like until during the 60s, early 60s of the JLA, forming, or I think it was the All-Star Comics, something like that, within that time. But Wonder Woman 130, 1962, was when, at the end of the issue, I actually need to go back and read that issue, but the gist of it was Steve, of course, he is ignoring Diana Prince, but he is lusting or whatever after Wonder Woman. And when he, I guess, is rejected by Wonder Woman, quote unquote, he goes after Diana. And he comes around the corner and he sees her on the arm in arm with Superman, and she says that she has other plans. So that was pretty much their first tease of a date. And it has gone on from there. They are best friends. DC and George Perez wanted them as a couple in the 80s. So yes, they have been linked, for decades. But Superman, John Byrne, he wanted Clark to be more human. And I can't really stand that. I really can't stand that human thing, because it's like, what defines human?
Well, on that, Brett, I think I know why. I think because they're trying to, superficially, mind you, it's superficial as hell, trying to make Superman relatable because I'll admit that Superman had a relatability problem. The way you do it is you do the way the New 52 did it, because everyone has felt like they don't fit in somewhere. Exactly. That's why when I read Justice League 12 for the first time, that was the birth of my believing in this relationship, because they both said we don't fit in anywhere. And it's to the point where, because everyone has felt like, for one reason or another, that we don't like fit in somewhere.
Exactly. And the thing is with post crisis, I mean, honestly, I don't know the how he's relatable because what what John tried to do was he made Clark like this football all-star. You were rah rah America. Um yes, he had the Kents, but I mean, you can have your parents' support, but at the same time, going back and forth to them like for every little thing, every little problem, except, instead of learning it as a grown person, grown man, whatever, you go to be coddled. You can have advice from your parents, but the babying thing as an adult, no, no. And then with the whole farm life, I mean, they really watered down his intelligence too. That Batman is smarter, that Lois is smarter. He's just this galoot. He's just this, simple farm boy, big oaf. And another thing, now they're trying to call him a gentle giant and
Oh God.
and this himbo type thing. And
The himbo
overly
thing
nice.
started with that stupid Superman anime.
Yeah, well, they've always called Superman a himbo. It's just gotten worse. So you have this whole thing, and even Batman calling him corn-fed. These insults are
Or
not
Lois calling him
relatable.
Smallville.
Right, and the thing is, with her calling him Smallville was very much an insult. I don't like that they try to romanticize it, as in like, well, she calls him that because now it became like this thing. No, she called him that as a belittlement of him coming from a small town, like in a sense of he's a hick, or something like that. So yeah, to try to turn that around as a um something romantic, no, I don't
It's
I
very
don't like that.
gaslighting.
Yeah,
Now,
and then mhm,
the other thing is like going back to like Clark going back to like his parents constantly. They're not ultimately going to be able to understand exactly what he's going through. Diana is closer to understanding what he's going through because she's a superhero. She deals with all the same stuff he does every single day, particularly since on the Justice League together. So at least if there's someone he goes to advice, and he does go to her many times in the comics, even post-crisis, for advice on how to deal with things. How even in the first chapter of Immortal Beloved, he does that. And it's it works really well.
exactly. If you have him constantly going to Diana, and okay, you're saying that he is supposed to be married to Lois, that she's supposed to be the one that understands him and knows him, which not at all, because first she's at close proximity to Clark and Superman, and she still couldn't figure out his identity. And second, she doesn't understand the burden or the weight as a superhero. Again, she's just a reporter, a glorified reporter, but she's just a reporter that will get saved. And honestly, within the comics, you have not seen her actually deal with, whatever she's writing. She's mostly writing, these glorified pieces for Superman. Or the supposed, her getting the story of just basically a write up of what we read is not really her actually doing anything. So, yeah, that whole thing I don't
Yeah.
agree with. Um,
Go ahead.
Especially when Clark can go to Diana and she is much more understanding. She does not belittle him. She, you know, is the one that he can open up to. And yeah, in Immortal Beloved, that bait and switch story, he admits that he can is different with her, that he can actually talk to her, you know.
So,
So
fun fact. So, I went to my comic book store and I picked up this random Superman trade. I didn't even flip through it. I didn't know what it was. I was like, okay, I'm familiar with this. I kind of like it. I'm flipping through it when I get home. And I come to that moment in Immortal Beloved and I'm like, oh no.
oh, they
It's
tried
the
to slip
moment
in.
when they're on the bed and I'm like, what the? I'm like, oh, so apparently I own that now. Which I'm like,
It's
I'm fine. I'm going to keep it as an object lesson of my son. So he knows, do not do this.
Exactly. It's actually a terrible story. I mean, it very much shows how, within post-crisis, they try to it's like with going back and forth of some writers didn't care for the marriage and they wanted to get rid of it, and it's other writers that didn't per se care for the marriage per se. They just kind of wanted this agenda against Superman and Wonder Woman shipping, kind of like how Bruce Timm, Rucka, um, did. So yeah, that is really just like John being Damien's playmate and have really no type of um relevancy with anything else. Is basically how the marriage is. It really doesn't
Exactly.
have any relevancy other than stopping other ships.
Exactly.
And honestly, it's not even stopping the ships because DC still, in a way, ships Superman and Wonder Woman. Is very
Have
little.
you seen the Wonder Woman 800
Exactly.
page?
That's exactly
I
what I was
showed
going
it
to
to a
say.
friend of mine. So my friend Tyler, he's not really involved in comic book stuff. I just told him, take a look at this issue. Take a look at this panel. Tell me what you would get if you looked at two people holding each other like this. Is the image of them holding each other behind the sun? He's like, oh, so they're a couple. And I'm
Right.
like, right? Because I love where I got into an argument with someone on Twitter saying, oh, yeah, that was just a platonic hug. How is that a platonic hug?
Exactly. I mean, first when Bertel posted just the middle image of, you would think that, oh, this is just a commission or something like that. But when she kind of like went let it be known that it was for a comic, it's kind of like, oh, wait, so they are acknowledging the relationship. And then with that, it's the fact that if you go with Conrad's those couple of issues where Clark was kind of appeared in them, and you see that he really did leave their relationship ambiguous. It was like, and he admitted it. He said that, yeah, you can read it as friends, you can read it as more than friends, but it's really leaning more to the more than friends thing. And this Wonder Woman 800 was very much in your face. They obviously want to be, are, or something like that, more than friends.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, more and more. See, here's the thing. At this point, I'm at the opinion where just let DC do whatever it wants because eventually it's gonna what goes around comes around. Now, the next couple is one that I'm admittedly not as familiar with, but I did read The Authority because James Gunn recommended it for a movie. Midnighter and Apollo, and actually, interesting fact: I just read the entire Warworld saga. They play a heavy part of it, so it's kind of cool about it. Brit, I'm going to explain to you the way the story goes. So Superman assembles the Authority to go and take over Warworld. You know that. So
Yes.
they all get captured. Superman gets turned into a gladiator. Midnighter starts an underground resistance movement against Mongol by himself and rescues Superman.
Honestly,
It's so Batman.
and that is what it it really is. Like, Apollo and Midnighter is basically Superman and Batman as a
Except gay.
well, yeah, I think that was pretty much the purpose of their
That's the
characters.
purpose. And honestly, here's the thing. This was my opinion where instead of DC changing the sexuality of characters for representational purposes, and don't get me wrong, representation is important, 100%. You have these fantastic characters that are to us, to comic book readers, iconic. They can be more. Hopefully, if they're featured prominently in the Authority movie, we can get that. But essentially, you have these fantastic characters that are badasses, rightfully so, and you're not using them.
Yeah, well, again, it goes back to DC and the creatives being lazy. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. There you go. A lot of this is just laziness. Because let me put it this way: these two are some of the coolest DC characters of all time. Because what Midnighter can do, I believe one of his powers is he can see the weakness in anything.
Oh, that's cool. I
And
did
I'm
not
like,
know that.
and Apollo is basically a walking sun. In fact, I think he was being used to power Warworld when they were captured, and Midnighter just starts murking people left and right. It is so badass.
I mean, honestly, like you said, DC has very interesting characters. It's just the fact that their creative, like, first, DC wants to go cheap now because, as I said earlier, digital sales are flat, or basically, I believe it was only like 5 to 10% that it really matters. So yeah, that's awful.
Oh gosh.
And then you have physical copy of, the physical books in the comic shops where, and I've showed you that these comic shops are pleading for people to come in and buy these books. And it's kind of like, well, if you're not giving, the general audience, or, something that interests them so they can invest, then, you can't go pleading if you turn your back on ideas.
Exactly. What's actually kind of interesting, you bring that up, Brit. So I did an interview, I think the other day, a couple of days ago, the point is, and what's cool about it is that my friend Chris Fraction, he's writing an indie book, and he brought up about how his LCS, what they did is they got rid of all their Funko Pops and only sold back issues, and they're doing great.
What, and that's the thing, is that back issues are, I mean, here's the thing. The new stuff is very mediocre, and it's not anything that you want to invest in, because you know that there's like a certain hidden agenda within
Unless
the
you're
writing.
unless you're a Green Lantern fan. I have to bring that up because Green Lantern is stupendous right now.
Right. So with certain characters, minus Green Lantern,
Thank you.
that is how, the fans, well, quote unquote, true fans, real fans, whatever, that is how they are reacting. They ask for these certain things. I would say the main thing, the best example for this was the Batgirl's book. They asked for Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown. They just wanted a Batgirl's book. And even the first, I think the first issue debuted below top 50.
Oh God.
So
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
that's the thing. When Twitter demands something, they historically do not show up. Here's another great example, Britt. The Superman Lois and Clark book. You saw how
yeah,
piss poor those sales were. That for Superman, and for supposedly the status quo that everyone supposedly wanted. That is horrible. That's why what's kind of funny, whenever I see a Clovis fan put up on Twitter that they're the majority, I'm like, really? Because the sales don't show anything.
yeah, when on CBR, the forum, and that's another thing, is that the comic book site, boards, you had this, first of all, CBR started with Kingdom Come, which is so ironic that a lot of DC's, like, I would say, big booms within, kind of modern day is Kingdom Come and New 52.
Yeah.
And within those events, you have Superman and Wonder Woman as a couple, and that is the main topic of discussion. And you can have these, whether you like it or not, is controversial. You have the fans or whatever talking, and they want to hate read, hate buy. Even Williamson, he admitted that with having people happy, like the fans happy with, the status quo and what they so-called wanted, they weirdly aren't buying the books. But if you have it where it's things that they don't like that they are going to complain about on Twitter X, they will buy it, which is such a weird thing. But I'm like, hey, if the controversy sells, then keep it going. Because
keep shaking up that status quo if it brings the moolah.
yeah, because obviously if you give them what they want, which like I said on CBR, it was this whole thing, especially with the transition of Convergence and Rebirth, how and even with the first debut of the issue of Jurgen saying how Lois and Clark was unbreakable, but at the same time they was breaking up Superman and Wonder Woman, how they were the original power couple, but then you have Tomasi saying Superman and Wonder Woman aren't a power couple anymore. But at still the general audience, people know Superman and Wonder Woman. They know that power couple is Superman and Wonder Woman. Like
That's the
I've
IP.
seen, right? I've seen so many posts for um for Halloween, for weddings,
As we
for
showed, I think 2 episodes ago is when we
yes,
showed that.
for anything that when they say power couple, the image will be of Superman and Wonder Woman.
Because of
So
equality. That's the thing.
exactly. Right. So with the Lois and Clark book, when that first debuted, they was, the CBR Lois and Clark fans, or mainly Lois fans, was like, we got to get this to selling like hotcakes to show them that we want this. We want to get rid of the Superman and Wonder Woman relationship, or even put New 52 Superman with New 52 Lois, break them up, yada yada. Um, let's show them what the fans want.
Mhm.
Well, given that at that time you have the truth storyline, and
Oh
you
God.
see that, yeah, you see that Superman and Wonder Woman's book kind of was at that 40 to 30K. And then the Lois and Clark books debuted at that 30K range. The fans actually kind of tried to compare them and was like, well, this sold, I don't remember which issue it was, but it was like this issue sold a little bit better, and so that had something to do with why DC went on ahead and, you know broke off
But what they
Clark
don't,
and Diana's
but
relationship.
what they don't realize is that one issue does not really affect it. It's how it goes sustainably. Because again, that book.
Right. And it's the fact that they use the idea that Superman and Wonder Woman still was like, I would say 18 issues ahead, and it still sold well over 100K.
Mhm.
And it's the fact that we know purposely they are sabotaging this book for another status quo.
That
And
historically is the reason why they changed the status quo. But anyway,
exactly.
moving on to our next couple real quick. I got to keep this moving here. All right. The next one is one that's actually one that leads to my third favorite female superhero, Green Arrow and Black Canary. Which,
Honest
fun fact, she has served as the leader of the JLA in the really good Brad Meltzer run.
and with this couple, okay, so I've noticed that a lot of these couples, of course, they say that they are like um were together from the beginning or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, with Arrow and Black Canary, that same complaint that they say that Wonder Woman will be like just Superman's girlfriend or whatever, that's exactly what happened to Black Canary.
Mm-hmm.
She's a supporting character now for Green Arrow when she was very much an independent character, and and now it's kind of like she can't be by herself.
Well, the way to fix that is kind of in the same way that like Black Canary say has like the Birds of Prey and all this stuff. You give her other books where she can really establish who she is. With Wonder Woman, you can even give her like a book where she teams up with like Big Barda and Hawkgirl, and you can call it Wonder Woman's Furies, and just have that be like a team up book among the warriors, the female warriors. And yes, I just pulled that out of my ass in like 2 seconds.
That was a really good idea. I mean, it's
I would
better
so
than
read
what
that
DC
book, as a matter of fact. Oh, geez.
Honestly, it's better than what DC is doing, you know?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah.
So, but yeah, so that complaint about, and that's the thing is that with going with what was actually said with these writers, like Tomasi, saying that it's absolutely necessary to have Diana in the spotlight equal. He had a problem with that, but he can easily write Lois because you can put her in the background. He would probably have no problem writing Green Arrow and Black Canary because you can put Black Canary in the background.
Yeah.
So with Diana, it's something about her that make these writers have a problem with her character. And also with Green Arrow and Ollie and Dinah, he was a cheater. I did not
Yeah,
know
he
that.
was. He was, and what's actually kind of interesting is that so he was a cheater, and they did have to deal with that. The other thing is that I believe it was in Longbow Hunters. I may be wrong on this, so someone correct me in the comments. But there was a storyline where Black Canary was captured and R-worded. I'm going to put that there. She had to recover from that, and she had to like heal, and she managed to come back from that. So in a way, she is like a very inspirational character for DC. Plus, here's the thing: yes, she has powers, but she's not like God tier. Yet she still is like one of the best fighters in all of DC.
Yeah, and I mean, she and Diana trained.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's another thing. And I do like that dynamic with Diana and Dinah. They just seem like they can really play off each other.
Mhm.
But yeah, going back to Ollie, and also a thing is that they talk about Clark and Diana like being, you know, black hair brunettes with blue eyes.
Mhm.
But Dinah and Ollie
They're
are
both
blondes. So it's kind of like there's a lot of double standards. I with researching these couples, it's kind of like, okay, you complain about Superman and Wonder Woman, but this couple actually has that problem.
Yeah, and no one cares about it because again, people like it, and more people like Superman and Wonder Woman than Superman and Lois. We all know that. But see, even with that, Superman and Lois both have the same hair color too, so that doesn't work.
Right. And I mean, Superman and Lois is just
So boring.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
just so boring. Speaking of not boring, here's another couple that's actually really great. We had 2 movies featuring them, Aquaman and Mera. Now, the really cool part about Aquaman and Mera, when you read their history, is that she was actually sent to kill Arthur. She was an assassin because the way it works is that there were 2 groups of Atlanteans. There was Atlantis proper, and then there was Zebul. Zebul was kind of like a prison colony of Atlantis. Now, her father, King Nereus, wanted to actually, the king, I changed it for a reason, wanted to like get back at Arthur, so he sent Mera to kill him. She later fell in love with him and then decided, no, Atlantis is not what we thought it was. So it's kind of very similar to Wonder Woman coming to man's world and seeing how truly great it is. Now, the reason why I corrected myself instead of saying father is because in the new 52, yes, he was the father in the movie King Nereus, but in the comics, he was her intended husband, not her father. Just want to be clear on that. For some reason, they changed that for the movie.
Well, you know, they always change something, maybe for trying not to have any conflict, you know, because comics, honestly, with these relationships, like I said, researching them, the only relationships really that seem at least semi-healthy are Arthur and Mera. And
Mhm.
and the thing is with them is that they are the longest like marriage.
Mhm.
And for DC to try to put Superman and Lois as like the top marriage, no, it
No.
has been Arthur and Mera, especially with even losing a child,
Yeah.
Arthur Jr. But they were married before,
Mhm.
and and just that whole dynamic of them being equals and going overcoming that conflict of, yeah, my wife was intended to kill me, but we, fell in love, and that whole background
Not only that,
speaks.
not only that, in the Rebirth Aquaman books, this was the other Rebirth book. So remember in the new 52 when they rebooted, they were dating and not married. At the end of the new 52 run, he proposed to her. Now, what's kind of cool is that Mera had to get the approval of this group of mystics in Atlantis in order for her to marry Arthur. They didn't give it to her. I forget exactly why, but then she brings it to Arthur, and Arthur's like, "I don't care." He basically said he would abdicate the throne if it meant they could be together.
Yeah, and also, um, the whole thing that Arthur is both land and sea,
Mhm.
and Mira is more of sea.
Mhm.
But that dynamic of her, that she learns how to be of land and he learns how to be more of sea, you have that balance, of basically the whole different sides of the same coin. And that is another thing that what makes, honestly, I Superman and Wonder Woman is always going to be number one. But if they, weren't the couple that really resonate with me, Arthur and Mirror Story still will be like the number one.
Be on the lookout for a certain story starting up in Brit and I's universe because they may or may not be the feature.
Right.
So, speaking of feature, as a matter of fact, Batman Catwoman. Now, okay, here's the thing. This is why I don't necessarily hate the Tom King run because he had some really good BatCat moments.
Well, okay. It's always Tom King.
It's always Tom. See, here's the thing with Tom King: he has great moments, but he also has really, really, really stupid moments.
It's kind of like it's never something in between. It has to be either something really, really good or really, really bad.
I know, because there are even good moments in Heroes in Crisis, and then there were like that Super Wonder moment where Wonder Woman puts her hand on his shoulder, and then you read what he did to Wally West, and I'm like, ah.
Yeah. Yeah, that, I mean, yeah, like I said, and he really goes for the PTSD character assassination, depression type, whatever. Like every character is depressed or very angry or something like that, and
Mhm.
it's really showing how. Of course, the only character that's not so much as angry, but again, you're going to the extremes of very naive in the galoot route of Superman. Because in Heroes in Crisis, the fact that he let Lois, run the story and put so many people in danger, letting their files
Mhm.
to publish them, that was so wrong.
That was extreme and actually vaguely illegal. But here's the thing on the legality. Here's why BatCat actually works because Batman has historically had like a very black and white view of crime. Now, here's the thing: when he meets and gets to know Selina, he knows it sort of puts in a moral gray area because she's not being this cat burglar out of like just so. It's because she grew up poor, she didn't have anything, and it was basically out of
Right.
desperation. So really, it shows Batman that it's not necessarily a black and white world. Adding on to the fact, it shows that Batman can be happy. Because here's the thing: the problem with Batman in relationships is that a relation, and this is the problem I have with Wonder Bat, in addition to it just being a stupid ass ship, is that any relationship per se will distract from Batman's like objective of keeping Gotham safe. The thing about Catwoman is she can actually help him and go out and patrol with him. And this is the good part of BatCat of that book, because they show this. And even in like Tom King's Batman run, and even in the Hush animated movie, they show them fighting side by side. And then when they get back, Bruce Wayne can finally take over, and he doesn't have to be Batman all the time. He can be Bruce with Selina.
Exactly. The thing with, besides Tom King's, like, his Batman was like suicidal and he had like mommy issues. It was the fact that he really emphasized that Bruce and Selina, their mutual love is to make Gotham better. And that pretty much has been their whole thing for decades, is that, like you said, Selina, she was was homeless. She,
in
lost
some
her,
continuity, she was a prostitute.
yeah, but that's something that she had to do, and she learned, the streets of Gotham. And then the fact that Bruce, he might be this billionaire, this nepo baby or whatever, but his whole life changed because of the streets of Gotham. And they can understand, and they both have been traumatized by Gotham. And that is their goal, though. Even if they can't change Gotham, it's the fact that if we are
Keep
traumatized, yeah, we're gonna keep fighting, but we also gonna be traumatized together and
Yeah, kind
understand
of.
each other.
In a way, it's very much similar to Superman and Wonder Woman. It's like we're going to be isolated together, per se. We're going to be essentially bond over our trauma. And there's another couple in this slideshow that I'm going to bring up later. But that's why I've always really liked Batman with Catwoman, as opposed to Batman with Talia. Here's my problem with this. Talia's the type of person that will stab Bruce in his sleep, and you don't want that.
Well, here's the thing. The thing is, with Talia, and going back to Bruce and Selena, is also the fact that um that really is the way that Bruce does, his, like you said, it's not black and white. It's a gray area, and Selena is in that gray area that he needs to be in. It's not so much as him being, he's a vigilante. I mean, you already are in a gray area, but also, like you said, with Wonder Bat, how the thing is, Selena and Bruce, they aren't trying to change each other. They basically just accept each other. With trying to put Diana, it's always that, what can Diana do for Bruce? And it's, she can change him, she can fix him, she can make him better, she can, but she doesn't understand that type of trauma. She doesn't understand his mental and that emotional block that he has. And the fact that you think that just being in a romantic relationship can help that is very weird, because Diana isn't a, and they also sexualize it too.
Well, also, not only that, I always bring up, okay, so your argument is that Wonder Woman can help show Bruce that it doesn't have to be so dark. He's best friends with Superman.
Right. And he has also, even with being best friends with Clark and being around Clark way more than he is with Diana, he still does not change.
Exactly. Plus, here's the thing. I tell people, here's the dirty secret. DC's never going to change Batman, because Batman, the way he is, sells comics. I'm saying with BatCat, you don't have to change at all. With Talia, here's my problem with Talia. And this gets into why I don't like Superman with Lois. Actually, it's a similar reason. In the same way that Lois encourages Clark to abandon his Kryptonian heritage, in my mind, Talia encourages Bruce to leave behind Bruce Wayne and fully embrace just Batman. And I'm sorry, Selena embraces both.
Well, here's the thing. Actually, Selena and Talia at the point were equal of loving Bruce and Batman at the same time. The
Okay.
thing with Talia though is first her whole character was assassinated and retconned to be like this, the whole Al Ghul demon assassin, that whole thing was Grant Morrison, and he very much went about it in a very racially,
Mm-hmm.
way.
I see.
And the thing is with Talia, she was done very wrong. But when she first appeared, she very much loved Bruce, and it was consensual with having um their son or Damien. But Grant Morrison, I really don't know what the motivation was for the change. Like
I'll ask him if I
it,
ever
it was
interview him.
racial. Yeah, it was racial, but at the same time, honestly, that still does not just give a justification.
No, no,
So
no, it does not. And
yeah,
as someone that has read the Grant Morrison Batman run in its entirety, yeah, I definitely see that. He definitely he basically made it so Talia R-worded Bruce, and I'm like,
yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, and now you have writers after him, and even in modern day. First of all, with Damien is supposed to be, I think, is Arabian and
Hmm.
Chinese. So he
Somewhere
is
in there.
supposed to be a little bit like his shade of skin is supposed to be a little bit darker.
And they've
And
never shown that in the it's
yes,
really the comics or like the animated stuff at all.
yeah. And you also have, which was the 5G plan, was because he embraced like the Al Ghul side, is that he turned into the evil assassin. And honestly, that really kind of goes, I see more of Talia in the same way that how fans and writers try to make Diana with Clark. Is that
Hmm.
if Clark is with Diana, she's going to turn him into like this Kryptonian tyrant or something like that.
Thanks, Tom Taylor.
Yeah, so I will put them in the same category, and how both, even though Selena, she has gone from like, she's been African American and she's been Cuban. So, but Talia is mostly distinct, the distinctive, um, woman of color for Bruce. And it, like I said, it's just something racial, a racial thing to make it seem like Damien chooses to be Robin or to be the next Batman because he has his father as, a Caucasian man, and this is better than my mother being who she is. I just don't really see
Yeah,
a problem. That's the whole problem with the relationship of why it may seem unappealing to people. But when you actually read up on it and understand that, no, just like Superman and Wonder Woman, when they try to make it seem like, even in the context of Clark and Diana refute the whole thing of being gods, writers or fans still want to inject that whole narrative that's obviously been debunked. That's the
yeah,
same thing.
exactly.
Yeah, that's the same thing with Bruce and Talia, is even though she did not R word Bruce, and it was a retcon. And then the fact that Grant Morrison had to walk back on that. But fans, of course, they are going to use the bad narrative to push another ship. But no, you don't do that. So yeah, for Bruce in the ships, honestly, I ship him both with Selena and Talia
Oh,
because
interesting.
with knowing the relationship and what it's supposed to represent, especially because she did love Bruce and Batman, and she also, with Talia's conflict, the same as Selena. very much in the gray area of wanting to be like this anti-hero, or or wanting this life with Bruce, but also felt like she had to be dedicated, or to her father.
I,
And and
I
and
can
that's the
respect
thing.
that. I can respect that. Next up, Nightwing and Starfire. And this was an interesting one because I just started actually reading the Perez Teen Titans run. And yeah, you definitely see a little bit of this. I love the moment when she learns English by kissing him. And I love in the animated movie to also capture this really well, where as soon as she says, I learn languages by kissing, like Kid Flash and Beast Boy are like, I know Spanish. That's
It
so
would
good. I
be
love
teenage
that.
boys, yeah.
Yeah, teenage boys, exactly. And what's kind of funny is that there was a scene where Starfire and Donna Troy come out in bikinis because they're having a beach day, and then Beast Boy morphs into a dog and starts howling.
Wow, that's yeah.
Beast
Beast
Boy is
Boy,
kind of a creep in that
yeah,
run, but still,
yeah.
it's all good. See. Here's the thing. I don't really get the appeal of Starfire and Nightwing. The next one I do, but this one, it's always been like, why though?
Okay, so let me explain.
Okay.
So just like Bruce and Talia, Bruce
Mm-hmm.
and Selena, Clark and Diana, Arthur and Mera, they all have this connection of basically leveling each other up and truly understanding each other. And it's having this understanding of an otherness. So with Nightwing and Starfire, as um as Grayson was, transitioning from Robin to Nightwing, he felt like he needed to become, you know, a unique being out of Batman's shadow, out of the shadow of Robin. And Starfire was the one that gave Grayson this inspiration to, become Nightwing, and to grow up a little bit more than to be stagnant and to feel like he had to stay in the shadow of Batman and the identity of Robin. And that's the theme that I love about these couples, Clark and Diana, Arthur and Mera, Bruce and Selena, Bruce and Talia, is because the women really take control, and they also push the men to be more of themselves, of their true selves, their unique selves, instead of like when you have Lois and she's not really pushing Clark to be better. She's basically pushing him to be stagnant, or the fact that he has to fall back to be, less than who he is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, with and it's the fact that Starfire and Nightwing, that is why their relationship started way before and it was more genuine before the next couple that you're going to present. Um and it's just the fact that they had this, like I said, a genuine and more solid relationship, and you saw the progression. Especially, yeah, they might have kissed for her to learn languages, but they actually had this relationship of friends, and they grew together.
I see. That's interesting. I like that. Now, the next one, Starfire, Nightwing and Batgirl slash Oracle. Here's where I like this one, because this is kind of like it's going off. They understand each other because they and it's kind of goes into why I like Batman with Catwoman, because they both like understand Gotham, because let me put it this way, they are still products of Gotham, whether or not they were born there or whether or not what happened to them there. So they both like understand that life. They both understand the superhero life. They both understand how much of a pain it is to manage Bruce Wayne. So there is that. I'm glad you didn't send me this other couple I'm thinking of, because remember in Three Jokers when Jeff Johns tried to put Jason Todd and Batgirl together?
Oh yeah.
I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, that was
As
weird.
much as I love Jeff Johns' writing, that was one where I was like, oh no, sorry, dude.
Is it in one of the like Arkham games? She's with Tim Drake.
Yeah, and that's stupid too. But I'm like, at least no, it's not even at least. It doesn't work with Tim Drake either. It's kind of funny. If you look closer, she's wearing like a Flying Grayson's necklace, so she's still remembering her relationship with Dick.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, so with this relationship, it's very much, to me, it's like Superman and Lois because it's surface level. It's the reason why they became a couple. Well, first, Barbara Gordon, her whole character had to be retconned. And that's the thing that I don't like, is that they have to retcon things and the revisionisms and stuff like that to make something fit together.
Okay.
And she was an older woman, like,
oh yeah, wasn't
closer to Bruce's age.
Wasn't she and Batwoman created to dispel rumors that Batman and Robin were gay?
And Catwoman, yeah.
Yeah.
They were all created to be that. So she was. So Bruce Timm did one good thing, is that originally Barbara was Bruce's, original love interest. The only thing is having her as a college student to be Nightwing.
Yeah, I get the feeling that's what he was homaging. The problem with, he forgot the other really key point of that homage.
Yeah, that is and the thing is, with Grayson was like 16, so he was very much a kid when she was like 10 to 12 years older than him. Mm-hmm. When he just had like a kid crush on her, and their relationship when they first kind of interacted was basically him. Yeah, he had a crush on her, but he was actually like a bratty little brother. So again, that's kind of weird to me, and it's like Steve and Diana, really, is just, gender reversal, that they started out as like this teen crush, little brother, older sister type relationship, and then the fact that she was originally Bruce, a love interest. And then the only reason why they are together is because Batman editorial didn't want Starfire as a super to be within Gotham. So yeah, so it's a lot of more editorial things than actually the history.
So, fun fact, did you know that technically they have gotten married? It's just it was in death metal, and then they agreed. Bruce married them, and then they agreed, hey, if when we end this, let's go back to just dating.
Yeah, and
like, that was stupid.
Even with that, there is where Grayson was going to marry Starfire and Corey, and he actually cheated on Corey with Barbara as a one-night stand, and he gave the next morning he gave Barbara the invitation to the wedding, and that was one thing that kind of just really threw it off, because they were trying to make it seem like this is a grand love story, but it really didn't start as them being a couple until like the very late 90s. So these characters have been, since the 40s, so 50 years, and then you want to make it seem like they've been this pair. Even Grayson, they had to reboot or retcon his year one story, and Barbara's too, for her to be closer at age and for them to actually have this mutual attraction. And again, I don't like that, because I know it came before, and with trying to retcon this as like it's always has been thing, I don't like that.
I see. You make a compelling argument. Next couple, I'm sorry, you were gonna add something?
Oh, and also, when they were trying to put him with Barbara as like it's always been her, he did the same thing that Clark did to Diana with Corey, and he said, "I don't love you," and I'm
Oh
just
God.
like, yeah, that is just trying to make relationships work. You don't need to put down the other love interests or other relationships to prop up. Like Superman and Wonder Woman, you never saw that within the context of the books. Like
I
it
see.
was it was just Clark and Diana's relationship. It was always just the writers and fans, outside of the books that will say like Diana and Clark, are better than Superman and Lois or something like that. That's what you would hear. But in the context of the books, you being petty like that, like Tomasi, Rucka, Jurgens,
Ah,
or anyone like that, that is something that I just don't agree with. So it makes the relationship just I don't like it.
I see. You make a very compelling argument. Next
And
one, Flash and Iris. This is one of the more wholesome ones that I actually do like. Now, the crazy thing that when Flashpoint happened and Barry so they were married when he left. When he came back after Flashpoint, they were not in a relationship at all. So imagine, and he remembers the previous world. So imagine how like crazy that how like that messes with your head.
yeah, I mean, Barry, he screws up the timeline all the time.
Mhm.
Um, Honestly, the only thing that I like about Barry is that every time he screws up the timeline, somehow Clark and Diana are together, or
Yeah, I
he's
know.
rooting for
Isn't
them.
that the best? I'm like, hey Barry, can you script the timeline again?
Yeah, he's rooting for them to be together, which one thing of going with the Flash ending, like I can't stand that they changed it, but with the Flash ending, we would have had Henry Cavill and Gal Gadot. We would have had their Godot. We would
Mhm.
have had their Clark and Diana together, walking together or something like that. So with that little scene, that would have been something, a little closure than the mess that they put out with Clooney. Um,
Can you imagine if they actually were together at the end of this and the last shot is them kissing? I've been like,
ha,
ah!
or even holding hands would have been,
That would have been enough. I would have been like, okay, I can take this. Thank you. This whole
yeah,
movie is worth it.
right.
I'll go through the crappy CGI just for this.
And then we have Crisis, of course, the
Mhm.
animated movie where the
Thanks to
Earth
Barry.
2. Yeah, and also well, with the start of Tuckerverse, Clark and Anna were together because of Flashpoint. And then in the comics, the mod era when Diana lost her powers, I believe. I believe that was the same part that she decided to quit the JLA because she didn't have her powers. And um Barry, he was like, Clark has lost her, and he always thought that they would get married. But because, she quit the JLA, that and just the fact that, what she was going through, that it wasn't possible anymore.
Mhm.
So yeah, thanks Barry for changing the timeline for them.
We love you,
Um,
Barry. The other thing with this, with Flash and Iris, the thing about it, this is one of the things that the CW has severely screwed up because here's the problem with that show.
that they're
It-
brothers and sisters.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. And I'm like, you see, the problem with this is that you could have just had him be raised by a neighbor and this whole situation would have been resolved. But even though they're not blood relatives, it kind of counts.
I mean, you can be raised like it, you can be raised by, you know, that family, whatever. But at the same time, just don't make it seem like they're brother and sister.
I
Like,
know it
don't
makes it
establish
worse.
that.
It makes it worse when Joe West is like, "I've always considered you my kids," and I'm like, "What the Bruce Tim are you talking about?"
Yeah, don't do that. Be like, okay, yeah, Barry, you are like a son, but you're not a son. I
I just
mean,
really,
something like that.
what
Yeah,
were they
that whole
smoking in
thing
the
was weird.
writer's room when they did that? It was this, and plus, here's the thing: they also made her too much of a damsel because Iris is kind of a damsel, but but the way I think of Iris West, she's a more tolerable Lois Lane because she's a journalist, but she's actually capable. The fun part, there was this cool thing. Do you know how her and Barry first went on a date? So this was in Flash Rebirth, the thing that like started like the Flash under Jeff Johns and established that
Hmm.
Eobard is responsible for Flash. So they were doing a case, and Iris was investigating it for the local paper, and then obviously Barry being a crime scene journalist, they were being interviewed. She was kind of short with him, so she was like, "I'll tell you what. After you're done at the lab tonight, I'll take you out to dinner." So he was like, "Okay." He went to the lab, got struck by lightning, and became the Flash. And he wasn't like out for like a month or so. He was out for like a couple of days, and then he goes on the date with her. So really, what's kind of funny, she's been there literally since the beginning of the Flash.
Which and the fact that they have an established, besides the sibling weird sibling thing of CW, but the fact that they have an established relationship that's actually romantic, and that Barry, it's not only just Barry, it's not only just Flash, it's Barry too. That is the thing that makes the longevity truly surreal, for Aquaman and or Arthur and Mera as a married couple, that they are very much more real than Clark and Lois, or Barry and Barry and Iris, even Wally and Linda. They have a better relationship, longevity, marriage than Clark and Lois. I mean, because Lois couldn't stand Clark at
Mm-hmm.
all. She couldn't stand him, despised him, just hated him. And that was the point of her character. And it wasn't just because she was there from the beginning, yeah, but read between the pages. She was there as mostly like this antagonist, but also she hated him. But she was infatuated with Superman. And that's the thing with some of these relationships, or most of them, is that they aren't just infatuated with one or the other. Most of these relationships are equals, except for Superman and Lois and Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor. Those are the only two relationships that really do not have equal footing. Obviously, because of the superhero civilian trope thing, but also because the whole trope of this civilian love interest only cares for the hero and not the others, the civilian side. But to
Exactly.
have Barry and Iris, or Wally and Linda, or anyone else to completely accept and love both sides, you know, from the get go, just makes it an all around better trope if you do have the hero and civilian relationship. And that's the thing of even with Crisis is why I actually like the relationship. I never really cared for Barry and Iris, or other relationships, but Crisis really showed the relationship as being very healthy and a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I like that whole thing where like they basically will like he's like freezing time and they're like going through together. That was really cool. And plus, again, here's the thing, and that DC documentary brought this up very well. Barry's just a regular dude as well that happens to have powers, and he's with Iris. So really, he's just he's a little bit closer than like Clark is to that whole little
Exactly.
relatability. He's kind of like Spider-Man in that he still has those moments where like everything's going right for him, and then something happens. So I'm like,
Exactly.
that's why I
Exactly.
love it. And secretly, I'm becoming a bit of a Flash fan in the comics. Let me put it this way: New 52 and Rebirth, where another fantastic Rebirth book, but New 52, oh my gosh, Manipul's Flash run is superb. Like, it's some of the best writing, and he also draws it too. And Manipul is like, what a colorful artist. Next couple, Clark and Lana.
Okay, so it's a very short, in a sense, relationship, but again, it's much more healthier than Clark and Lois, with Lana being his childhood best friend turned girlfriend, high school sweetheart. And the fact that she knows him and she's the one that accidentally, you know, but confided in her about his powers. And he was able to open up a little bit to her, at least as, a child. And then, of course, they grow up and they go their separate ways. But this the fact that he had, that first love experience that makes it, you know, even better. And also, it goes to show that when DC or the Lois and Clark fans or Lois fans say that, like, Clark only learns, or his humanity is only from Lois or something, or
That's objectively
romance.
wrong.
Yeah, it's the fact that he grew up with someone that he confided in, which was Lana. And
They
the
make it
Kents.
seem like Clark met Lois as soon as he left the ship.
Exactly. They are very much Omni-Man.
Yeah,
They
they
make it seem,
basically made it. They basically made Superman Omni-Man.
yeah. And what is Omni-Man's objective? He's not really a good guy at all. And that's pretty much what Injustice is if he loses Lois, he has a couple of screws loose and stuff like that, and he does not care for humanity. Look what he did with the Rebirth. Like you called him, Coward in the Convergence spinoff, and then Rebirth, the Drowned arc, when he consciously
God.
he lets people drown.
And Batman somehow thought that was a good idea, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
As
in
long
the
as
name?
Lois was saved, it was okay, which is just totally weird to me.
But again, to your point, yeah, he's met other people before her, and I think the whole Superman is human because of Lois ignores the contribution that Jonathan and Martha Kent had.
Exactly. I mean, they are the ones that raised him, that showed him right from wrong, that showed him what you want to say how a human's supposed to be. And again, his first romantic experience was Lana. So I would very much put her as way more important than Lois.
Now, speaking of another relationship that actually Frank Miller explored in Superman Year One, Lori the Mermaid.
I honestly, this is kind of like his tester in a sense of
This is just hilarious.
it is it's a very interesting relationship, and it's kind of like a tester of Clark and Diana's relationship, because Lori is a mermaid, she's otherworldly, and this is Clark when he's in college now, and he is the fact that he met someone that is otherworldly just like him. But the fact is, of course, she's a mermaid, so they can't really be together, unless he turns into a super mermaid or something like that.
Lori and Aquaman, if Mera never works out.
Oh, that would be
That'd be an
that would
interesting
be a
Elseworld
storyline.
story.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
here's the Elseworld story. Superman is Aquaman, and that instead of coming from Krypton, he came from the ocean.
wow. See, you just bring up these ideas, and DC for some reason has a struggle.
I got so many Elseworlds idea, DC. Like, what if Lois Lane was with General Zod, aka Zois?
You're going to promote
I'm going to
that.
try so hard to make sure that becomes a thing. Watch DC actually do that. If they do a book, an Elseworlds book, where General Zod is with Lois Lane, I am going to take credit for that.
Yeah, you're definitely going to have your receipts, and it's going to be like, no, you need to cut the check, Jared, cut the check. because that is his idea. So, yeah, with Lori, it was just the fact of having the experience of an otherworldly relationship. And again, he's still growing into and being in college and having, you know, he wanted that relationship, and to the point where he actually wanted to marry Lori too.
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, if he is so um invested in his other worldliness with Lori to a point where he wanted to marry her, then what happened? Why did DC mess up this character that he is supposed to be embrace his otherworldliness? Is not to take away his humanity or whatever. It's not to take away Clark Kent, because he can still be Clark Kent. It's just the fact of the books aren't called Clark Kent. It's called Superman. It's
Yeah.
not called Kent Comics or Smallville Comics or whatever like that. It's called Action Comics. So what you're gonna get is mainly about Superman disguised as Clark Kent. You know, he doesn't have to wear glasses. Like
Mhm.
it, you know, it's just that whole backwards thinking of no, Clark Kent is the real deal, but Superman is a disguise. Honestly, that is just so like, do you actually
Simplistic.
believe that? Or,
It's
you
extremely
know,
simplistic. Now,
yeah.
speaking of overly complicated romances, but are actually really cool, the Hawks. And
Uh,
this is what something that Bruce Timm has severely butchered.
yeah, with that quadruple square triangle
All right, so what they
thing
did
with
is this really dumbass idea where Hawkman was a stalker. Like an
yeah,
action. I say New 52 Steve was a stalker. Hawkman was 10 times worse.
yeah,
And I
definitely.
was like, what? And then he tried to like put John Stewart in with the reincarnation, and you just overcomplicated things, dude.
Yeah, the only thing that I know of the Hawks is that they are like reincarnations, but they are like this love that even if they are apart, they are still very much connected.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's this double standard that the Hawks, I mean, they say complain about Clark and Diana having the same color scheme or that they look alike or something like that. But the Hawks are the Hawks. They look alike, and
Mm-hmm.
they have the same color scheme. They're this you have Hawkman and Hawkgirl or Hawkwoman. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for you to have this still this weird complaint of Clark and Diana, whatever similarities or that they have, the
Again,
Hawks have the same thing.
and not only that, what's kind of cool about the Hawks is that with the whole reincarnated and how they're so linked to each other, it kind of brings in that like that idea of love being fate.
Right. And honestly, I don't know if there's like, I guess only in Elseworlds, but even even with um the Hawks supposedly being equal, that modern time I see it as only like Hawkman's book, and Hawkgirl or Hawkwoman is a supporting character. So again, you
There is a
have that
Hawkgirl
issue.
book.
It was one, but it seems like they are mostly just like with Green, Ollie and Dinah. It's kind of like they do slip with trying to make the woman still below the man, and
True.
that's the thing.
It's because here's the thing: the guy IP here has the stronger IP name. Even with Superman and Wonder Woman, Superman is the first name in the marquee because he has the stronger IP than Wonder Woman.
I mean, like I said, they are both equal. It's
They are.
just
They are.
that it's just that maybe like a half a notch is that where Clark is above, like
Yeah,
half a notch.
exactly. I'll give you that half a notch. But all in all, this is actually really cool. And my favorite moment. So they spent like there was this time when Kendra slash Shire it didn't want fate to determine her life, so she didn't want to be with Carter. And then after Blackest Night, they got turned into Black Lanterns. And then they were brought back with the power of the White Lantern of Life. But she got back with all of her memories. In other words, she for the longest time, she didn't remember her previous lives. He did. So what happens is that there's this great moment. She goes, I remember everything, all of her lives, and most of all, I remember you, Carter. And then they kiss.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I really love that. It's a really good one. The next romance I very much like, Green Lantern and Star Sapphire. Yes! I was so excited when I saw you put this in here. I was like, yay!
Yeah, so you can explain this one.
All right. So what's cool about this one is, so the origin is that, so Hal Jordan's father was a test pilot for Carol Ferris's company, her father's company. And what happened was actually it's a really sad story. So obviously we know what happened to Hal's father. He was testing a plane, the plane crashed and he died. It turns out that Carol's father got really sick because he blamed himself for what happened to Hal's father. And he always kind of thought of Hal as like a son per se. And then, so fast forward a few years. So Hal is like a washout from the Air Force and he needs a job. So he goes to Carol's company, Ferris Air, and he becomes a test pilot for them. Eventually she finds out he's the Green Lantern. And obviously, you have the whole experience with like him dying, him turning into Parallax, which I've explained before, him coming back and having to earn his basic way back to life. And throughout it, she then becomes a Star Sapphire because what they do, the way they recruit is that they find someone that has great love for another. And obviously, Carol loves Hal. And he basically helps her get a handle on the ring. And that actually makes them very much equals, except what's kind of cool about it is that she's kind of like a Green Lantern, but she has her own spin on it where she's the Lantern of Love and she like gets her power from love. And one of the panels that I had was, and this is like the first time she's ever said, I love you to him in a long time, where, so during Blackest Night, to give them an advantage, he had to become Parallax again. So he had to absorb the Yellow Lantern entity of fear again and basically turn bad. So Carol kisses him one more time because she's not sure if he can if he'll be back, if he won't turn evil completely. And then the last word she says to him is, I love you. And then as it continues on, obviously he comes back to being a good guy. And then so they but throughout this entire thing, they're not together. So then in the new 52, as a matter of fact, actually, no, it was the last arc before the new 52. And this carried over again. One of the problems with the new 52 is that it wasn't a reboot. So Hal and Sinestro are taken captive by the Indigo Lanterns, which are basically the ones for compassion. And he has just enough ring charge for one construct. And he's like, I could find a way out of this. But the last construct he has is of Carol smiling. And he's like, that's the last thing he wanted to see. Obviously, he gets out. And then he shows up to Carol out of nowhere. He kisses her and he goes, okay, so let me start. He goes, look, I'm a mess. I get it. We probably won't work. But honestly, here's the thing. When I was captive, I only had enough charge for one thing. The only thing I could think of was you. Honestly, Carol, can you give me another chance? I think we can do this. And then Carol, like playfully goes, technically, this would be your 10th chance. And then they actually get back together. And then the current Jeremy Adams run, which is actually really good, they're not together. She's actually engaged to someone else, but they're kind of playing off of they still love each other. In fact, in this run, there's this body called the United Planets. It's basically the UN have quarantined Earth, partly because of how many superhumans are on Earth and like how much stuff started on Earth. So, and Hal basically makes his own ring out of willpower. That's one of the things he can do. But the thing is, whenever he tries to fly out, he keeps like falling back down to Earth, or his ring turns off. So he's trying to figure out a way off. when he does, so he's going off to find a way to get off the planet. Carol goes, "You're leaving again?" He goes, "Unless I have a reason to stay." And then in this fantastic exchange he goes, "Carol, all you have to say, literally, you just have to tell me to stay, and I will stay with you. That's it. I will put everything on hold. I will stay for you."
Wow, that's a lot of drama.
It's just so good.
But yeah, that's really good.
I just freaking love this one, and it's like the relationship of like, yeah, he's the screw up. It shouldn't work, but it kind of does because he's her screw up.
And also, what I liked about Carol, seeing her, she's kind of like Catwoman. She was a femme fatale, then a villain, but then she turned into a hero. And that's pretty much how Selena was, and that just creates a whole different drama source for Hal and Carol. And what I love about these relationships that we, mostly have on is the theme of conflict. That it's a lot of character conflict that they have, that it bounces off each other and they can overcome it.
Yeah. The other thing I love, say what you want about that Green Lantern movie, I still say it's underrated. There was this moment in it where he doesn't think he can fight Parallax, and he's like, "You know what? I'm afraid." And he says, "You can't have fear as a Green Lantern. Fearless is part of the job description." And then Carol goes, "You don't think your father was afraid?" And then Hal goes, "Well, if he did, he didn't let anyone hear it and see it." And then Carol goes, "Yeah, well, there's a word for that. It's called courage. And I see it in you." And then she goes, "The ring didn't choose you because you were fearless. It chose you because you have the ability to overcome great fear. I have always seen it." And I'm like, I freaking love that movie. Say what you want about it, but they have some fantastic moments. And fun fact, that was the start of Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively's relationship. It's from that movie.
Yeah, it was.
So that's one good thing that came out of Green Lantern.
And they've been together for a very long time.
Yeah, I freaking love my favorite thing he's ever done, because they troll each other on social media. He posted a photo of him and his family, and he goes, "They were the 3 most loving people in the whole world." And then there's Blake. I just freaking love that. And it's just that scene in that movie, because, yeah, the ring never says, "Hal Jordan, you have the ability to overcome great fear. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps." But the fact that Carol says it also establishes that here's the thing. In the same way that her love for him gives her her power of love, the way I see it, his love for her gives him the willpower, because he knows that if I fail, Carol's in danger.
Yeah, it's the whole, trying to balance each other out.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. As soon as I finished reading that Jeff Johns Green Lantern run, this became like my 3rd favorite DC couple. It's like there's no way around it, particularly because I love Green Lantern. Next one is one of my other favorites, Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. Context. So in the beginning of time, the world broke apart. It was like Ragnarok. Old gods died. New gods emerged. Every so often the planets would align, and then there would be a big war. Fearing a calamity, Darkseid and Highfather. So Darkseid's obviously the evil one. Highfather is like good. He's essentially God, and like New Genesis is heaven. So they swap sons, and then this is where you get Orion. Orion is Darkseid's son. Mr. Miracle / Scott Free was raised on Apocalypse, and the way he got his escaping skills is like he was kept in a cell at the bottom of the fire pits for like so long. And what he would do is he would learn how to pick the locks, and he would keep going. And he would explore all of Apocalypse. Then he would return before the guards came back.
Wow.
So it's really cool. I love this. And then he met Barda, and Barda was the leader of the female Furies. She was like the top warrior of Apocalypse, but she fell in love with him, and then she fled to Earth and became a member of the Justice League. And this is one of those things where like they come from opposite worlds, but they push past that kind of.
Yeah, and also the whole thing with Big Barda and Miracle being like um the taller woman or whatever and the shorter guy. That is the one thing that I I now understand what like some uh fan artists or writers or whatever try to do with Diana and Steve. It's like her being I see a lot of fan artists kind of draw her like Big Barda, and I'm like, they're two different characters.
Yeah, they're very two different characters.
And trying to have the dynamic that Barda and Scott have is not going to work with Diana and Steve. So yeah, with researching this couple, yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is what some fan artists or writers are trying to implement is with them. But again, they really don't have an identity.
Yeah. By the way, this is the other good Tom King book. I'm going to put that in there. Mr. Miracle is really good, particularly if you're a fan of the New Gods.
I mean, he's depressed, of course.
Well,
but...
yeah, he's typically not, but again, Tom King kind of changed that. The fun thing about that book also is that throughout the book, he starts wearing different DC character shirts. Like one day he'll wear a Batman shirt, a Superman shirt. I'm like, okay, that's clever. I really like that.
And also with them having a kid, I think his name is Jack. Yeah. So first, Tom King is basically recycling. So Jack, and he introduced Jack in Wonder Woman as the kid that she takes to the mascara. And second, the idea of Trinity came from Jack because they wanted the Super Sons to babysit Jack. But of course, that story, I guess DC didn't want to extend it or didn't give him like the green light for a well, they call it season, so a second season or whatever of the mini maxi series. So the idea really transformed into, oh well, Jack, even though it's Barda and Scott's kid, it's still the fact that he's kind of random. So they basically like, well, the whole Trinity idea of what if the Super Sons babysat a super or daughter and forced the idea of Wonder Woman having a daughter. That's the reason why I really don't care for Trinity, because she isn't a Wonder Woman character per se. She's just forced there to have the Wonder Woman attachment, just to say that but it's actually a Super Sons idea of Super Sons babysitting a Wonder.
Plus, yet another occasion when Yara is shafted, and I'm like, there's four Wonder Girls. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So then we get, speaking of Wonder, Steve Trevor and Etta Candy. See again, George Perez found a way to make a useless character useful.
Yeah, because Perez was trying to, and he succeeded, of having Diana basically practice what you preach. And her character was about feminism. And that's also another thing that I wanted to speak about way at the beginning, was when it comes to feminism, the idea is equality of the sexes. And what Clark and Diana's relationship represents is exactly that, is respect and equality of the sexes. Yes, they are going to butt heads. They are going to have conflict or anything like, or something like that. But they are on equal footing. And that is what the power couple, the whole marquee means. So for anyone who says that Diana's like, that will diminish her, no, it won't. I mean, honestly, she's diminished in her own book with trying to, like the Siegfried with Conrad, that whole thing the Asgardians and that whole thing. Then you have Steve. With trying to elevate Steve, you just the thing with trying to elevate Lois with Clark, you make Diana seem like she can't function. You know, like what Rucka did when she had to be put in a straitjacket and
Oh
Steve
God.
locked her up in the psych ward, or, you know, that whole thing where she doesn't understand what romantic love is because she isn't with Steve or something, or just because he's the first man she met, she is like a Disney princess, something like that. So when Perez decided that he is going the full route of female empowerment, and her motivation is about exploring and adventuring and learning the world solely because of what she wanted to do. And also, it was more of a mother daughter story instead of trying to implement Steve. And also, Steve being more of a father figure and big brother to Diana instead of that weird male fantasy first, you know, love interest. It just gave him a better role. And being with Etta, honestly, it just seemed more fitting for them to be together.
Yeah, it does. And plus, the whole relationship was done so well in that Perez run. Now, the final relationship we're going to talk about, and I was like, I figured you were going to bring this up, is John Constantine and Zatanna. It's a very magical pairing, if I may say so myself.
Funny, yeah. They they are opposites attract, but honestly, as we, wrapping up this whole thing with this last pairing, most of these couples that we have are two sides of the same coin. And with them being of equals and of the same background, um, abilities and stuff, but at the same time they have these differences that make them a little bit more balanced. This is what Zatanna and Constantine have. They are both magical beings, but at the same time, Zatanna is from, you know, her father, and Constantine was a little bit rough around the edges and, a little that bad boy type. But because Zatanna has a certain edge to her, it fits.
Mm-hmm. It definitely does, and I like that. This was one of the good parts about the DCAMU is when they put those two together, and they did this really cool like Constantine short after Apocalypse War, where so after the whole thing for encouraging Flash to do Flashpoint again, Constantine got put in this house, like outside of time. And the thing about it is that constantly he would be attacked and killed by like zombie versions of Zatanna and their kids. Now, what he finds out through the Spectre is it was his guilt that was constantly causing them to attack him, because really Spectre put him in that house so he could be happy with Zatanna, but it was John Constantine's own doing that he can never find peace.
Oh,
It was really complicated, but that was the other thing. Again, speaking of the DCAMU's problem, and I'll bring this up on my latest comic talk. They set up
mhm.
it's like in Justice League Dark, the first one, they kind of didn't like each other, and they kind of hinted that they liked each other, and then all of a sudden in Apocalypse War, they're a passionate couple, and I'm like, again, you thought they broke up Superman and Wonder Woman off screen? That was clunky. Try putting Constantine and Zatanna together off screen.
Exactly. A lot of the relationships are very much that way. Um, it's the fact of all of the supposed development happens off screen, and the thing is, Tomorrowverse is very much worse than
Mm-hmm.
that, but you know, a, and a very bad, budget too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with those relationships of even the Tomorrowverse, you have where, I mean, at least with Clark and Diana with the Tomorrowverse, we kind of had the hint with Earth 2 at least that they would have something developing um because of because of the ending
Mm-hmm.
of the first movie. But the fact that we couldn't see that development,
I would have liked
and
to have seen that.
I would have liked to see it, but also what's even worse is that Earth 2 Clark had to be married and all of that with Lois, even though it was off screen, it was still that whole life, you had to have that where it really didn't matter. Like if you was gonna have it off screen, why even bother putting it in? And especially how it seems so committed that Clark and Diana are together for Earth 2 was that in War World movie that her memory, came back because she saw younger Clark in the Superman suit. So it was like obviously their bond is very strong at this point
Mm-hmm.
of having a serious relationship. So yeah, why when you start something, then you develop something or break up something off screen? I just can't deal with that.
Welcome to DC being clunky, Britt. Welcome to DC
Yeah.
being clunky. But all in all, I like this a couple too because they do exactly. This is one of the rare occasions of opposites attract. Because I say rare occasions because people have tried to justify Wonder Bat with that. And I'm so glad Wonder Bat was not in this thing. Otherwise, it would just be Britt and I ranting for 2 hours. So all in
Right.
all, pretty great on this selection of couples. In my mind, both of them have value, and it was a great pairing of couples. So I think that's a good place to leave it. So Britt, do you have any teases you want to give us?
Okay, so of course all of the stories that I have to get to,
Yes,
get to, and
and I will keep
um
reminding you to get to those.
I know, well, there is something that I have to say,
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, all the teases that I have. But really just working on our story, and chapter 2 is very much mental driven, and as well as the emotion. I'm trying to nail, this conversations that I have because you've made me cry. So I just want to see if you can have a little sniffle or two
Oh my
from me
gosh!
this
So
time.
so now it's payback. Yeah, so that's how it is.
Exactly, exactly. And also, just the support that I've gotten from the Instagram, and just don't forget to subscribe.
Heck yeah. So, yeah, and definitely subscribe. All of Brit's links will be in the description below, particularly to our Shelterverse. But anyway, stay heroic, everyone. And remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lame, and Zois for life. See you later.